Hello everyone, my name is Lily Akins and I will be discussing women defending the nation in the 50s. Talking about this topic is very interesting to me because I enjoy talking about women and their movements for equal rights. As a feminist, this was an easy subject to bring to this podcast. So, most research platforms don't show us that women had important roles in activism in the 1950s, which is crazy to me because they really helped implement the Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950. And today, that is what we'll be touching on. So, before I researched this, I asked myself, just in general, jumping right onto it, how did women defend the nation? And so the women, like I said earlier, started the campaign called the Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950, and that helped prepare for possible nuclear war and allowed women to escape the narrow confinements of acceptable female behavior and in basic ways like that women should act or be. And for example, it instructed females to be attained through marriage, motherhood, and, mostly just staying home and doing homework, cooking, waiting for their husbands to come home from work. I also asked myself a question: what was the main goal of this campaign? What was the main goal of the Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950? And it was just the protection of life and property from attack. But leading into that, women were starting to volunteer for peacetime efforts when the men returned from World War II. So basically, when the men were gone at war, actually the women started to work at factories when the men obviously were gone at war. Because when the men left for war, all the factories were empty and there were no workers there. So the women started to work at the factories, but as soon as the men returned, the women got fired and the men got their jobs back, and that's when women started to volunteer for peacetime efforts. So the government asked women to volunteer and spread the word and, take control of first their family situation, but it was bigger than that. They would go into schools in the poor neighborhoods and go into the libraries and educate the people on how to protect themselves from nuclear attack. So talking about this it's really interesting for me because I love talking about how women just in general make history. And I think this was a really big one. And I would just like to end this podcast with a quote from Betty Friedan from The Feminine Mystique. Who knows what women can be when they are finally free to become themselves? Who knows what women's intelligence will contribute when it can be nourished without denying love? Who knows the possibilities of love when men and women share not only children, home, and garden, not only the fulfillment of their biological roles, but the responsibilities and passions of the work that creates the human future and the full human knowledge of who they are. It has barely begun the search of women for themselves, but the time is at hand when the voices of feminine mystique can no longer drown out the inner voice that is driving women on to become complete. This is Lily Akins from Mahalia Rita's class, signing out. Thank you.